Have you ever achieved something that you worked incredibly hard for, only to feel satisfied for about 5 minutes before immediately focusing on the next thing? Maybe you've noticed that no matter how much you accomplish, it never quite feels like enough. The standards keep changing, the goalposts keep moving, and deep down there's this lingering feeling that you're still somehow falling short. And most people think this is a motivation problem, an ambition problem, or maybe even a self-esteem problem. But what if the real issue is that you're playing a game that you were never taught how to win? So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the deeper root cause of this pattern that causes you to feel like you're never enough, so that you can finally start celebrating your wins and really feeling like you accomplished what you accomplished. Now, this pattern of feeling like nothing you ever achieve is enough actually comes from a common childhood pattern. And in order to understand this pattern and its effects, we have to understand a particular developmental phase in childhood. And during this developmental phase, it's really important for parents to be very consistent and to set up clear expectations where the child can feel like, okay, if I do these things over here, I'm going to get praise, my parents will approve of me, or if I do these things over here, I'm going to get in trouble and I will be disapproved of. And if during this developmental phase, the parent sets up clear, consistent, and reasonable expectations for the child, this enables the child to feel like they have a sense of empowerment. They say, okay, I can do these things and good things happen, and if I do these things, things that I don't want to have happen will happen. And so we can think about this developmental phase in childhood as the parents setting up a winnable game, a game that's maybe a little bit challenging, but fundamentally reasonable, and is something that the child can develop a sense of confidence that they can win that game. And I call this the parental game. And the reason why the parental game is so important is because when the child learns the parental game and learns that they can win in the parental game very easily, they project that onto work and relationships later on in life. They even project it onto reality at large. And this is true even on into adulthood. And so a parent that sets up a consistent and winnable parental game really sets their child up for success, because the child can feel like they can get wins in life, in relationships, and in work, and in other facets of life. But if parents don't create a clear, consistent, and winnable game for children, what ends up happening is the opposite. The children go on then into adulthood to project a sense of the unwinnable game onto work, relationships, and reality at large. And so if a child is in a situation where they have to play an unwinnable parental game, where they can never get their parents' validation or be approved of, or they can never score a point or a win in the game, that whole dynamic gets then projected out onto adult life. And for the child and later on the adult, this can create a sense of confusion, a sense of, oh, I'm never going to be enough no matter what I do. And it can even create a kind of existential crisis, like, why am I here in the first place? What's the game that I'm playing? What's the meaning of all of this? So if you feel like nothing you ever achieve is enough, and you just keep achieving things and achieving things and achieving things, and it never really feels like you closed the loop, chances are you were raised with some version of an unwinnable, unclear parental game. But luckily, even if you were raised with an unwinnable parental game when you were a child, you can actually in adulthood go in and change the game that you're playing in life to a more winnable game. You can actually go in and you can change your objectives, you can change the standards, you can change the rules. You have complete and total agency over that. And when you change your game to a winnable game, you can actually celebrate your wins, keep your wins, and find a sense of empowerment and meaning in the things that you do. And you can really feel satisfied with what it is that you've achieved. So I'm about to share with you a list of qualities that make an unwinnable game. And what I want you to do as I list out these qualities is to notice the ways that you're subjecting yourself to the unwinnable game. And you can notice this in the objectives and goals that you have. You can notice this in the rules that you apply to yourself, the limiting beliefs and mindsets, and also in the way that you react to wins and losses. And as a side note, if you happen to be a parent with young children or teenagers right now, you'll also want to make sure that you weed out any of these kind of parenting tactics, because you want to give your kids a winnable game. So the first quality of an unwinnable game is that the objective is unclear. So imagine if you were playing Pac-Man and you didn't know the point of the game was for Pac-Man to eat all of the dots. Or if you were playing hide and seek and you didn't know that the point of the game was to avoid being found. And in these cases, as if you were playing a literal game, you'd be very, very confused about the gameplay. And in childhood, this is set up by a parent that doesn't really clearly communicate their expectations to the child and doesn't create a clear objective of what the child is expected to do. And this dynamic in both childhood and adulthood can create this kind of sense of existential confusion, like what's the point of life? Why am I here anyway? What's the game that I'm playing? And another quality of the unwinnable game that dovetails off of this is if there are inconsistent standards and rules. And a childhood example of this would be like if the parent is okay one day with the child playing video games for 4 hours, but the next day, once the child is playing the video game for 1 hour, the parent yells at them and says, oh, you shouldn't be on the video game so much. Or maybe one day it's okay that the child eats 3 cookies, but then the next day the child can only eat 1 cookie. Or another day the parent just lets the child eat the whole entire pack of cookies all by themselves. And this translates in adulthood to never quite really knowing if you've hit the bar. Like it's okay, am I doing the right thing? Okay, I won this. Did I really win it? Or is that going to get kind of taken back? Or, was this a good thing? Was this a bad thing? And it creates, again, this kind of confusion. Now, the next quality of an unwinnable game is actually quite dangerous and insidious, and it's intermittent reinforcement. And this dynamic can happen whenever, let's say a parent gives sort of random validation to the child without that being consistent. So let's say that a parent is really flat and gives no validation for a very long time, and then sometimes they're really, really celebrating the child or really, really interested in what the child has going on. In this way, it sets up a dynamic like a slot machine where the child feels like they have to keep trying and trying and trying, and then eventually they get the jackpot. And this creates a kind of hungry ghost addictive kind of dynamic where the child keeps feeling like they need to keep pulling the lever and pulling the lever on the slot machine by trying to achieve more and more and more in hopes that this is the time that it's going to be the jackpot, where it's going to be finally they're going to get the validation or that they're going to get the love or that they're going to get the attention. But the issue is that this game is never fully winnable. It's like you get one achievement and then that's just one small hit, and then you're trying to get the next achievement and the next achievement, and it becomes like an addiction. Another quality of the unwinnable game is where wins are not celebrated or aren't celebrated until you win the whole thing. And the thing that enables a person to get really, really into a game and really immersed in it and to find it to be a meaningful game is that there's frequent wins throughout the game. But what can happen is if your parents or caregivers didn't celebrate your wins or give you frequent enough wins within your parental game as a child, is that you can think, I can celebrate my wins once I get to my big goal. Or maybe you don't celebrate your wins at all and you just move on to the next thing. Or maybe there's a kind of perfectionist standard that you had learned where it's like, okay, it's all or nothing. You either have to do the whole thing or achieve the whole thing, or it's not important at all. That's another way that parents set up the unwinnable game. And so in adulthood, it might leave you in a space where you feel like if you haven't done things 100% perfectly and completely, that you don't get to celebrate a win. And oftentimes in like a video game or a computer game, you get little bling sounds or you get little like check marks or, whatever it happens to be within whatever it is that you're playing. And so in order to feel like you're winning the game, you need those little check marks or those little blings, or in the case of just doing something in life that you're trying to work toward, you need to be able to celebrate those wins in some kind of way that gives you that same kind of satisfaction. Another quality of the unwinnable game is having a very, very low margin of error for success. So parents set up this unwinnable game, for example, when the child comes home with a 99% on their test and the parent says, well, why not 100? And what that communicates to the child is that perfect is baseline and that going above perfect isn't really possible. So all you can do is ever get to baseline. But then if you fall short of perfection, you've lost. And so that creates a sense of nothing I ever do will be good enough for my parent. And then that gets projected onto the world as nothing I ever do will be good enough, period. And that's because impossible standards were set for the game. And what's a shame with this one is that oftentimes parents are trying to instill a sense of a good work ethic in their child by putting high standards up, but it oftentimes backfires and does the opposite, because the child will either go like, okay, it's my responsible to play this unwinnable game where perfection is baseline. So in that case, it's totally unwinnable, but I'm going to keep trying to aim for perfection. So that becomes like this hungry ghost kind of addictive sort of cycle where nothing ever feels like enough. Or the child just says, okay, what's the point in playing this game? There's no way to win it. And then they become just very unmotivated. And so oftentimes what parents are doing there, it has a very good intention, but it ends up backfiring and doing the opposite. Or even if the child does develop a habit of trying to achieve success, it's in this very addictive way where the child never feels fulfilled or successful. Another similar dynamic is moving goalposts. So I had a client once who had a dad who was athletic, and my client was athletic too as a child. And their parent would always push them to the next level. So the parent would never celebrate a win when they would have a win on the football field. It was always like, okay, you got there, now get to the next thing. Okay, you got there, now get to the next thing. So it gave this sense that the bar was always getting raised all of the time. And the issue is that if you were a child who learned that the goalposts were always going to move, it gives that same sense of there being a very low margin for success, that perfectionism is the expectation, and that there's never any way to actually win this game. And so again, oftentimes parents have really good intentions with that. Again, they're trying to teach work ethic and pushing yourself past your limits, but they do so in a way that sets up an unwinnable existential game for the child even on into adulthood. And that's because that dynamic creates a lack of clarity about what the objective is, a lack of clarity about what the standards are, and there's a sense of it not being reasonable or winnable. Like the child can't actually score a point there. They can't actually get a win. And playing an unwinnable game is absolutely harrowing. If you've ever played a game that's truly unwinnable, even just like a game just for fun, it's a very difficult thing to deal with. And usually you just end up quitting because it's too much. For example, about 10 years ago when my daughter was 5 years old, we downloaded a Trolls game on her tablet. So Trolls like Trolls the movie. And we thought it was an official Trolls game, but it turned out to be this bootleg game that was really, really poorly made. And this game was a platform game, and every single time that you would go to play a level, the level would be different. So again, we have inconsistent expectations, rules, and standards. And so every time you, like, let's say, lost the level, which was inevitable, so you would go back to the beginning, but it wouldn't be the same level that you played the last time. And so you couldn't even practice to get better at it. And then the level would stretch on forever and ever, and it would be increasingly difficult as you went along. And so it would be like you would get to a point where you would end up like falling off a cliff in the game, to the point where we never got to the end of a level in the whole entire game. And to this day, I still don't know if there was an actual end of the level. Like if we kept playing, was there just going to be more and more game that kept getting generated? And so this game had all of the markings of an unwinnable game. So one, there's no consistency, there's no clarity, it becomes increasingly more difficult and even impossible to win the game. And the game got so frustrating that we just stopped playing it. So if in childhood you were taught that life is an unwinnable game like that, it can be very frustrating, it can be very confusing, and it can just be totally overwhelming to live in that. But luckily, you can change your game from an unwinnable game to a winnable game easily. You just have to consciously and deliberately change your mindset about that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you how to create a winnable game for yourself. Now, if all of this is resonating with you so far and you want to learn more, I highly recommend checking out my free webinar, 3 Shadow Work Secrets to Get Out of Your Own Way and Reach Your Full Potential Without Having to Fight Yourself. And the link is down below in the description box. Also, if you would like some support on your journey towards your big goals and you would like to work with me, I have a link to an application down below in the description box as well. So the first thing that you can do with any of your goals, as well as with life in general, is to set a clear objective for yourself to follow. For example, if you're someone who asks yourself, well, what's the point of my life? Or what's the point of this anyway? You actually can create the point. You can decide what the point of your life is. So the point of life is not something that you find, it is something that you create. Or you can also have clearer objectives, like let's say with your goals. Like let's say that you're, trying to to achieve something in your career, it's like, okay, well, what's the point of that? To what end? Being able to answer that question is really important for creating a winnable game. For example, in my own life, the way that I think about the point of my life is being itself, so just to experience it is part of it. But then I also have this idea that like there's this relationship between myself and the higher power, where the higher power weaves together for me all of these experiences in life, and then I experience those experiences and alchemize them into things that are more creative or more interesting, or that have some kind of positive output for me in my life, or that impact other people positively. And so that's basically the end that I have to all of my endeavors in life, and it creates this sense of life being very meaningful. And playing a winning game is really important for creating a sense of meaning. The second thing to do is to set very clear expectations, standards, and rules for achieving those objectives. So once you know the main point of what it is that you're trying to do in life and in your endeavors, then you can set standards for yourself and set reasonable standards. Don't expect too much of yourself. Make sure that they are things that are achievable but maybe slightly challenging for you. So it's important that you don't make your game too easy and that you don't make your game too difficult either. The next thing that you can do to create a sense of a winnable game so that you can feel like what it is that you do is enough is to internalize the role of validator. So oftentimes we can look to external sources of validation to see if we've hit a particular bar. But then what can happen is that, we're not going to get a ubiquitous like yes from everybody all around us. So if we put something out into the world, some people are going to like it and some people are not going to like it. And so you have to realize that you are the only person who can actually draw the line in the sand and celebrate your wins. And so if you're somebody who struggles with feeling like what it is that you do is enough, you have to actually develop the power to call it enough, to be the one that draws the line in the sand. Otherwise, you have this illusion that you're trying to match up to some invisible imaginary bar that exists somewhere outside of yourself. Another thing that you'll want to do in order to give yourself the sense of a winnable game and that what it is that you've accomplished is enough and is fulfilling is to celebrate your wins and to celebrate them consistently and to celebrate small wins as well as big wins. Don't put off your win until, like, let's say you achieve your big goal. Instead, find little wins every day and also celebrate wins around effort as opposed to just the outputs of that effort. Another thing that I recommend to create the sense of the winnable game is to collect your wins somewhere. So what you can do is you can write your wins down on a slip of paper or in a journal and basically keep them and somewhere safe so that you get the sense that your wins actually stay. Sometimes with the unwinnable game, what it can feel like is that you achieve something, then immediately that achievement goes away, almost like let's say a junkie trying to get another hit. And so in this way, you want to get a sense that your positives stay. The things that you do, the efforts that you put forward actually accumulate and don't just go away and evaporate the second you achieve them. And so you might get yourself a big jar, put little wins on a slip of paper and keep them in the jar. Another thing that you'll want to do to create a winnable game and to give yourself the sense that what you achieve is sufficient is to give yourself a 15 to 20% margin of error for victory. And so if you're used to operating in an all or nothing perfectionistic way, where it's like, okay, if it's not 100% complete and if it's not 100% perfect, I can't celebrate the win. Instead, celebrate the win if you get 80% of the way there. And finally, if you want to create the winnable game and you want to give yourself the sense that your wins actually matter, you have to call a win a win. Stop moving the goalposts. If you've achieved a win, draw a line in the sand. The win has been achieved. Even create a little ritual around it. And remember, it's only you that can draw the line in the sand. So don't, let's say, draw the line in the sand, erase it, and then draw another line in the sand. If you achieved something, then your win is a win and it gets to go into the logbook with the other wins. So with all of these things, one of the main things that you need to be able to do is to change your mindset so that you can actually feel like your game is winnable and that your achievements really matter and that they stay. And if you want to learn more about how to change your mindsets so that you can create a really compelling winnable game, I highly recommend checking out this video right here.